The sun hung low over the jagged ridges of Arizona territory, bleeding its last light across the desert. A single rider moved through the canyon trail, his hat tilted against the dying wind. His horse weary from miles of solitude. Folks called him Calder Reeves, though most just said the lone cowboy. He had no home, no kin, and no reason to stay in one place too long. His life was a line drawn across endless sand, quiet, empty, and fading. That evening, Calder was searching for water when he heard the cry. It came faint and sudden, carried by the river's whisper, a woman's scream, desperate and short. His instincts kicked in before thought did. He spurred his horse down toward the sound, where the Verde River snaked through the canyon like a strip of glass under moonlight. Then he saw her. A young woman was thrashing in the water, the current dragging her toward the rocks. Her arms flailed, her cries weakening. Without a second thought, Calder tore off his coat and dived in. The shock of the cold bit through his chest, but he swam hard, fighting the pull. When he reached her, she'd already gone under once. He caught her by the waist, pulling her to the bank with a grunt of effort. She wasn't breathing. Calder laid her down on the sand. Her long black hair clung to her face, beads and feathers tangled in it. Her skin was sun-warmed bronze, her dress made of buckskin. She was Apache, a native woman. Calder froze for half a heartbeat. In this land, helping an Apache could mean death. Tensions between settlers and tribes were at their boiling point. But she was dying right there in front of him, and he couldn't walk away. He pressed his hands to her chest, pumping steadily. Then he leaned down and gave her breath, the way the army doctors had once shown him long ago. Again and again, until at last, she gasped, water spilling from her mouth. Her body trembled, eyes fluttering open. They were dark and sharp like obsidian, locking onto his with confusion and fear. "You're safe," Calder said quietly, voice rough from dust and wind. "You're gonna be all right." But she scrambled back, clutching her chest, looking around like a trapped animal. Then her gaze darted to his revolver belt and the fear in her eyes deepened. He raised both hands slowly. "Ain't gonna hurt you? You fell in the river, that's all." Her voice came trembling in accented English. "You save me." He nodded. "Reckon so." For a moment, they just stared at each other, two souls on opposite sides of a war that neither of them asked for. The river gurgled softly nearby, mocking the silence between them. At last, she whispered, "My name is Tala Calder," he said simply. "You got folks nearby." She hesitated, looking toward the mountains. "My people camp there, but they will not welcome a white man." He gave a grim smile. "I figured as much." He stood, brushing the dirt from his hands. "You should go before the moon's too high. River's cold, you'll need warmth." Tala rose unsteadily, still trembling. "You risked your life. For me, why?" He looked down at the rippling water, his voice low. "Couldn't let someone die when I could stop it? Guess that's reason enough." Tala stared at him for a long time, something unreadable passing in her eyes. Then she gave a small nod, almost like gratitude, almost like farewell. She turned and disappeared into the shadows of the canyon. Calder watched until she was gone, the night swallowing her whole. Then he sighed and mounted his horse, unaware that this single act of mercy would soon drag him into a storm he couldn't ride away from, a storm born of old hatred, broken promises, and blood spilled long before his time. The desert was quiet again, but somewhere beyond those red hills, eyes were already watching him. The next morning came slow and gray, dragging its chill through the canyons. Calder Reeves was already on the move before the sun broke the horizon, his horse cutting through the valley mist. He told himself he'd done the right thing. He'd saved a life. That should have been the end of it. But in the West, nothing ever ended clean. By noon, he reached the small frontier town of Ash Hollow, a dusty cluster of shacks and saloons pressed against the edge of Apache country. The townsfolk eyed him the way they did every drifter, half suspicion, half pity. He tied his horse outside the general store, boots thudding on the wooden planks as he walked inside. "Morning, Reeves," the storekeeper, Old Man Harland, greeted him. "You look like hell warmed over." "Been riding all night," Calder muttered. He bought coffee, bullets, and a length of rope, the holy trinity of a cowboy's life, and left without another word. But the moment he stepped back outside, he felt it. That prickle on the back of his neck, the sense of being watched. Two riders sat at the far end of the street. Both wore buckskin and carried rifles across their saddles. Apache. Their faces were unreadable, carved from stone. One of them met Calder's eyes and didn't blink. Calder kept walking, slow and easy, though his pulse began to hammer. He'd seen enough border conflicts to know when trouble was brewing. The Apaches didn't come this close to town, unless they had a reason. And he had a bad feeling he was that reason. Later that afternoon, Calder rode out of Ash Hollow, heading north toward the high mesa. The wind carried whispers of thunder, and a storm gathered on the horizon. He made camp early, building a small fire beneath an overhang. That's when he heard it, a soft rustle behind the rocks. His hand went to his revolver. "Come out," he said flatly, nice and slow. A figure stepped from the shadows. It was Tala. She looked different now, wrapped in a dark cloak, her hair braided, her face painted with thin streaks of white clay. She looked like a spirit from the desert, wild and untamed. "You should not be here," she whispered. He lowered the gun, though he didn't relax. "Could say the same to you. Thought you were heading back to your people?" "I did," she said softly, "but they followed your trail. They saw you at the river. They think you took me." Calder's eyes hardened. "Took you? They believe you kidnapped me," she said, voice trembling. "They will come for you. Calder Reeves. Tonight." The fire popped, throwing orange light across their faces. Calder rubbed a hand over his jaw, cursing under his breath. "So much for good deeds," he muttered. "I tried to tell them the truth," she said, "but they do not listen. They remember only what white men have done." He met her gaze. "Then you best go before they find you here too." But she shook her head. "If they find you dead, they will think I lie. If they find you gone, they will hunt you anyway." The wind picked up, scattering sparks into the dark. Calder stood, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "Guess that means I ride out now and keep riding till they lose my scent." Tala stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "They will not stop. My brother leads them. He is war chief now, fierce, proud, and angry. His name is Nakai." Calder looked into the fire, jaw tightening. "Then maybe I should meet him and clear things up myself." "You don't understand," she said urgently. "Among my people, honor runs deeper than blood. You touched me, breathed life into me. They believe you have bound my spirit to yours." He blinked. "Bound your what?" "In saving me," she whispered. "They think you have claimed me." Calder stared at her in disbelief. "Claimed you?" Tala's face was pale in the firelight. "To them, it is worse than death." A low rumble of thunder rolled across the canyon, followed by distant hoofbeats. Tala turned toward the sound, her eyes wide with dread. "They are here." Calder grabbed his saddlebag and kicked dirt over the fire. "Then we'd best move." They ran toward the horses, the sound of pursuit growing louder. Lightning split the sky as they galloped into the night, a cowboy and an Apache woman, chased by a war party through a land already cursed by blood and vengeance. And as the storm broke over the mesa, Calder realized something he hadn't before. His act of mercy had not saved a life. It had started a war. The storm rolled over the land like a beast waking from its sleep. Lightning cracked the sky, painting the canyon walls in flashes of ghostly white. Calder Reeves leaned low in the saddle, rain pelting his face, his hat dripping. Tala rode beside him, her cloak whipping in the wind, eyes darting toward the shadows behind them. "They're gaining," she called, voice barely cutting through the roar of thunder. Calder glanced back for riders, maybe 5, racing hard through the darkness. The war party was smaller than he'd feared, but they were relentless. Apache trackers could follow a trail through hell itself. "Keep your head down," he barked. They thundered across the open flat hooves, slamming against wet sand. Calder's horse, Dust Devil, snorted and stumbled on a rock, but he urged it on. His mind raced. He couldn't fight them head-on. Not with Tala, unarmed and no cover for miles. They needed higher ground. He veered toward the rocky rise to the north, a stretch of ridges he'd crossed once before. "Up there," he shouted. Tala followed, her horse agile as a deer. The storm grew wilder, sheets of rain turning the desert into a blur of gray. Lightning flashed again, and in that instant, Calder saw the warriors fanning out behind them, circling like wolves. "Damn it," he muttered, "they're hurting us." By the time they reached the ridge, his breath came hard. He swung off his horse and pulled Tala down with him, dragging her behind a cluster of boulders. The storm masked their movement, thunder booming over the sound of their horses. Calder crouched low, rifle ready, scanning the darkness. Tala's breathing was quick and shallow. "They will not stop," she said. "Nakai will not stop. Then we'll make him think we're ghosts." Calder growled. He tore a strip from his saddlebag, soaked it in gun oil, and wrapped it around a small rock. "When I say run, you run downhill. Don't look back." "What will you do?" she asked. "Buy you a few minutes." She hesitated, eyes wide with fear, not for herself, but for him. "You saved my life once," she said. "Do not throw yours away." Calder gave a dry smile. "I've been throwing it away piece by piece for years. Might as well make it count." Before she could argue, he lit the oil-soaked cloth and tossed the rock into the canyon below. The fire burst bright against the rain, a false signal, a lure. Then he fired 2 quick shots into the darkness in the opposite direction. The echo bounced through the canyon walls, confusing their pursuers. Shouts followed. The Apaches split up, chasing the decoy. Go! He barked. Tala ran. Her cloak vanished into the curtain of rain, her footsteps swallowed by mud and thunder. Calder stayed a moment longer, watching the ridgeline. He could barely make out the shapes of the riders below, moving like shadows between flashes of lightning. Then he turned and followed her. They moved for hours, slipping through ravines and dry creek beds. The storm began to fade, leaving only the smell of wet earth and gunpowder in the air. By dawn, the first pink light crept over the desert hills. Tala stumbled, exhaustion in her every step. Calder caught her arm and steadied her. We'll rest a spell, he said quietly. They found shelter beneath an overhang of red rock. Calder started a small fire, its warmth barely cutting the cold. Tala sat close, shivering, her dark hair plastered to her face. You did not have to do this, she said softly. You could have left me. He looked at her through the smoke. Maybe, but then I'd be no better than the men who started all this. Tala's gaze softened. My brother will not forgive this. Not because you did wrong, but because you made him lose face before his people. Calder nodded slowly. Pride's a hard thing to outrun. For a moment, they were silent, just 2 souls caught in a storm that wasn't done with them yet. The wind moaned through the rocks, like the desert itself was whispering a warning. Tala looked up at him. If they catch you, they will not just kill you, they will make it slow. He met her eyes steadily. Then I better make sure they don't catch me. She hesitated, then reached into her cloak and handed him a small carved pendant, a circle of bone painted with red lines. Take this, she said. It means protection, though I do not know if it can save you. Calder took it carefully, his rough fingers brushing hers. Thank you, he murmured. Far in the distance, a hawk cried out, slicing through the morning stillness. Calder looked toward the sound and saw smoke rising on the horizon. Tala followed his gaze, her face draining of color. That's my people's signal, she whispered. They know we're still alive. Calder stood, tightening his belt and checking his rifle. Then we move again. The desert stretched out before them, endless, merciless, and waiting, and somewhere out there, Nakai rode with fire in his heart and vengeance in his hands. By noon, the desert heat had returned with a vengeance. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world scrubbed raw dry, cracked, and eerily silent. Calder Reeves rode ahead, his eyes scanning the barren horizon. Behind him, Tala's horse lagged, its pace slowing with exhaustion. We'll stop soon, Calder said, glancing over his shoulder. She nodded weakly. Her face was drawn and pale, the strain of the chase wearing her thin. Calder knew she couldn't keep this up much longer, neither could he. They needed shelter, and luck was running out fast. Then he saw it. Nestled between 2 cliffs, half buried in red sand, stood the remains of an old mining town, weathered buildings, broken signs, a church steeple leaning like a dying man's shadow. The name carved into the wooden archway read Prospect Hollow. Looks dead, Tala murmured. Dead's better than hunted, Calder said. They rode into the ghost town, hooves echoing through empty streets. Tattered curtains fluttered in the wind, doors creaked on rusty hinges. The place smelled of dust and memory and something else, something older. Calder tied the horses near the saloon and pushed the doors open. Inside, cobwebs draped the ceiling like funeral veils. Bottles still lined the counter, their labels faded to ghosts of words. A piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed and cracked. Make yourself comfortable, Calder muttered dryly. Ain't much, but it's got a roof. Tala stepped cautiously inside, her gaze drifting over the walls. This place feels wrong, he gave a half smile. Most ghost towns do. They settled in, building a small fire in the hearth with splintered wood from broken chairs. As the flames flickered, Calder finally allowed himself to rest, removing his hat and wiping the sweat from his brow. Tala sat nearby, staring into the fire's glow. After a long silence, she spoke. When I was a child, my people told stories of places like this, she said softly. Towns where white men came, dug holes in the earth, and left it bleeding. Calder looked into the fire. They weren't wrong. Men came here chasing gold, found none, and left death behind instead. She turned to him, her dark eyes searching his. You said you were a soldier once. He nodded slowly. Union Army. Fought in the territories after the war. Thought we were bringing peace? Mostly, we brought graves. Tala's expression softened. Then you understand. Blood remembers, even when men forget. He stared at her for a long moment, the firelight dancing in his eyes. You speak like someone who's seen too much. She looked away. The silence between them grew heavy. Outside, the wind moaned through the broken streets, carrying whispers that almost sounded like voices. Calder reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the small bone pendant she had given him earlier. You said this means protection. Tala nodded. It was my mother's. She said it binds the spirit of the giver to the one who carries it. He frowned slightly. So if I wear it, it means our fates are joined, she said quietly. In life, or death. Calder stared at the charm in his hand, unsure whether to feel comforted or cursed. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air, the sound of a distant rifle. The bullet hit the saloon's post with a splintering snap. Calder hit the ground instantly, rolling toward the window and peering out. Damn it, he hissed. They found us. Tala's eyes widened. How? They're trackers, he said, reloading his rifle. They could smell a trail through a sandstorm. He fired a single shot back, the echo bouncing through the empty streets. For a moment, silence. Then movement. Shadows darted between buildings. 3, maybe 4 men. Stay low, Calder ordered. He moved to the other side of the window, scanning for a clearer shot. If they come through that door, don't hesitate. But Tala wasn't looking at the door. Her gaze was fixed on the street outside, on the warriors' faces. Her breath caught. Calder, the one leading them. It's Nakai. Calder followed her gaze and saw him tall, fierce, with feathers braided into his hair and war paint streaked across his face. He rode forward on a black stallion, rifle resting casually across his lap. He shouted something in Apache, and the other warriors spread out. Encircling the saloon, Tala's hands trembled. He won't listen. He'll kill you to reclaim his honor. Calder checked his rifle again. Then I'll just have to make him earn it. Lightning flashed again in the sky, though there was no storm this time. Only the fire of conflict about to reignite, as the first war cry echoed through the hollow town. Calder muttered under his breath. Reckon mercy really is a curse. And then the shooting started. Gunfire shattered the stillness of Prospect Hollow. The echo bounced off broken walls and empty windows, a chorus of thunder born from rage and misunderstanding. Calder Reeves pressed against the saloon's wall, rifle in hand, heart pounding steady as a drumbeat. Across the street, shadows flitted between the ruins for Apache warriors. Moving swift and silent, Tala crouched near the bar, clutching a small revolver Calder had tossed her. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with fear and resolve. Stay down, Calder ordered. If they get inside, shoot to stop, not to kill. They won't stop, she whispered. Not until one of us dies. The next shot came through the window, splintering the table beside her. Calder returned fire, the recoil slamming into his shoulder. One of the warriors cried out, tumbling behind a water trough. Another flank of movement caught his eye, a figure sprinting toward the back. He turned quickly, firing once more. The bullet struck close, kicking up dirt. Then a second rifle cracked, the sound sharper, closer. The bullet grazed Calder's arm, tearing fabric and flesh. Damn it, he hissed, gritting his teeth. Tala rushed to his side. You're bleeding, just a scratch. He pushed her gently back toward cover. Save your concern. You'll need it later. Outside, Nakai's voice rang out in the Apache tongue, commanding, furious, echoing through the town, though Calder couldn't understand the words. The tone said enough. He's telling them not to kill me, Tala murmured, listening. He wants to do it himself. Calder loaded another round and gave a bitter grin. How thoughtful. The firing paused, then silence. Calder's instincts screamed. He crouched low, scanning the gaps between the boards. The wind carried the faint creak of leather and the crunch of footsteps on gravel. They're flanking, he muttered. He grabbed Tala's wrist. We move now. Back door. They slipped through the shadows, stepping over broken glass and fallen chairs. Just as Calder reached for the door, it burst open. A warrior lunged at him with a knife, the blade flashing. Calder blocked the strike, wrestling for control. The two men crashed into the wall, knocking over a barrel. The knife slashed again, grazing Calder's ribs. He grunted, swinging his rifle like a club, striking the warrior square across the jaw. The man fell hard, motionless. Before Calder could recover, another shadow filled the doorway. Nakai, he stood tall, his face painted with ash and crimson, eyes burning like coals. The storm in his gaze was colder than steel. Leave her, Nakai said in broken English, his voice low but deadly. You touch what is not yours. Calder raised his rifle, breathing hard. Didn't touch her that way. She was drowned. I pulled her out. Nakai's jaw tightened. She belongs to my people. You made her spirit unclean. I saved her life. Calder shot back. That ain't unclean. You do not understand, Nakai growled. Now she walks between worlds, neither ours nor yours. Tala stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Brother, please. He is not our enemy. Nakai's glare flicked to her, pained but unyielding. You shame our ancestors with these words. I live because of him, she said, her voice breaking. Would you rather I had drowned? He looked at her for a long, silent moment, then at Calder. Maybe that would have been kinder. Lightning seemed to flash behind his eyes as he raised his rifle. Calder moved first. The two shots rang out. Almost together, thunder in a dry sky. Calder's bullet grazed Nakai's shoulder. Nakai's round hit the wall inches from Calder's head. Tala screamed, diving between them. Stop. The echo of gunfire died slowly, leaving only the moan of the wind through the empty streets. Nakai staggered back, clutching his bleeding shoulder. His warriors appeared, weapons raised, ready to fire, but he lifted his hand, stopping them. His gaze stayed locked on Calder. This is not over, he said coldly. You have stolen her spirit. You will answer for it. Then he turned his horse and rode off. His men following into the dusk, Calder watched until they vanished over the ridge. Every muscle in his body tight, the saloon stood riddled with holes, the air thick with gunpowder and dust. Tala sank to her knees, trembling. You should have killed him, she whispered. Calder holstered his rifle. Wouldn't have changed a damn thing. She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. You don't understand. He'll come back not with 4 men this time, but 40. Calder stared out at the horizon, where the sun was bleeding into the earth. Then I reckon we'll need to be gone before the moon's up, he said quietly. But even as he spoke, he knew it wouldn't matter. Some storms you can't outrun. And this one, born from a single act of mercy, was only getting started. The desert wind was cruel that morning. It carried the taste of dust and blood, whispering across the mesas like an omen. Calder's horse moved slow beneath the weight of exhaustion, and Tala rode beside him, silent as a shadow. Behind them, the smoke of burning wagons still curled into the sky, a reminder that peace in the West never lasted long. For 3 days, they had fled from both Apaches and bounty hunters. Neither tribe nor white man cared much for mercy. Calder's crime, saving an Apache woman, had branded him a traitor to his own kind. And for Tala, being seen with a cowboy made her an outcast among her people. They stopped near a dry creek bed. The sun already cruel overhead. Tala dismounted first, her steps unsteady. Calder saw the faint tremble in her hands, the pale sheen on her forehead. You're burning up, he said, kneeling beside her. It's nothing, she murmured, though her voice was thin. The water. It was cursed. The river I fell in it belonged to the spirits of the drowned. They marked me. Calder frowned. You're talkin' fever nonsense. Her dark eyes lifted to meet his. You don't believe in spirits, cowboy, but they believe in you. He didn't answer. He'd seen too much death to believe in curses, but the truth was, he didn't understand what had happened that day. The moment he'd breathed life into her, something had changed. It wasn't just that she'd survived, it was as if something else had awakened inside her. Sometimes, when the night fell still, he thought he heard whispers in the wind calling her name. That night, they camped beneath the stars. The fire burned low, the wood hissing softly. Calder cleaned his revolver, watching Tala as she sat near the flames, humming an old Apache song. Her voice was beautiful, haunting like the cry of a coyote across the canyon. Suddenly, she stopped. They're coming, she whispered. Before he could ask, an arrow thudded into the dirt beside his boot. Calder dove for cover as shadows emerged from the rocks. For riders, faces painted, rifles gleaming in the moonlight. The Apaches had found them. He rolled, fired twice. One man fell. Another bullet grazed his arm. Tala stood, her hair wild, shouting something in Apache. Her voice carried across the canyon, sharp and desperate. The riders hesitated. Tala, Calder shouted, get down. But she didn't. She raised her hands instead, palms open, speaking fast in her native tongue. Calder caught only fragments, brother. Spirits. Not his fault. The leader of the group dismounted. His face was lined with years and sorrow. He approached slowly, eyes locked on Tala. You should have died, he said in English, his accent thick. You broke the river's vow. Calder stood, gun ready. You take one more step toward her. The old warrior's gaze shifted to him. You are the white man who pulled her back from the river. I saved her life. Calder snapped. The warrior's eyes burned with fury. You stole it. She was meant to cross over. Now the spirits demand balance. Tala's voice shook. Uncle, please. I didn't ask him. He raised his hand. Then you will pay the price together. Before Calder could react, the Apaches vanished into the darkness. The echo of their threat lingered long after the hoofbeats faded. Tala sank to her knees, trembling. They'll come again, she whispered, until the balance is restored. Calder holstered his gun, jaw tight. If they come, they'll meet lead instead of ghosts. She looked up at him then, eyes full of sorrow. You don't understand, Calder. The spirits want what's theirs, and they don't die by bullets. The wind rose again, moaning through the canyons. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled, though the sky was clear. Calder stared into the dark horizon, a chill running through him despite the desert heat. For the first time, he began to wonder if the woman he had saved was truly meant to be alive. The storm broke just before dawn. Wind howled across the canyon, tearing through the dry brush and stirring the ashes of last night's fire. Calder woke to the sound of thunder rolling over the cliffs. Tala sat a few feet away, her shawl drawn tight, staring into the storm with hollow eyes. They're close, she whispered. The spirits. I can hear them. Calder pushed himself up, grabbing his rifle. You need rest. You're seeing things that ain't there. But he knew she wasn't wrong. The air itself felt charged, heavy, like the desert was holding its breath. In the distance, a figure stood on a ridge, barely visible against the lightning. Then another. And another. The Apaches had returned. Tala rose to her feet. They won't stop, Calder. Not until I go back to the river. The hell you will. He stepped closer, his voice rough. I didn't pull you out of that water just to lose you to superstition. She smiled sadly. It wasn't superstition that brought me back, Cowboy. It was you. Your breath gave mine back. You tied your life to mine that day. Calder froze. What are you saying? The balance, she whispered. If I live, you must die. The river doesn't let both souls walk away. The sound of hooves echoed behind them, Apaches riding fast through the storm. Calder grabbed her arm. We're getting out of here. But Tala didn't move. She stared at the black water of the river below the canyon, shimmering under the lightning. You can't outrun fate, she said softly. Gunfire split the air. A bullet struck the ground near Calder's boot. He spun, returning fire, forcing the riders back. Go, he shouted. I'll hold him off. Tala shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. No, Calder, you've done enough. Before he could stop her, she ran toward the cliff, the storm whipping her hair around her face. The river roared below, wild, merciless, alive. He chased after her, heart hammering, boots slipping in the mud. Tala, he cried, don't do this. She turned to him at the edge, lightning flashing behind her. Her eyes glowed with a strange, unearthly light. You gave me life, Calder. Now I give it back. He reached for her, but she stepped back. And fell. Calder dove after her without a thought. The world became a blur of rain and thunder and crashing water. He hit the river hard, lungs screaming, arms thrashing. For a moment, he caught her hand beneath the surface, her fingers warm. Alive, and then she was gone. Swallowed by the current. When he dragged himself onto the riverbank, the world was eerily silent. The rain had stopped. The storm had vanished as quickly as it came. He coughed, gasping for breath, staring at the black water. There was no sign of her, only the faint whisper of the wind, and the feeling that she was somehow still there. Then he saw it. Her pendant, a small turquoise stone, lying beside him in the mud. He picked it up, closing his fist around it. The stone pulsed once, faintly warm, like a heartbeat, and then it went cold. Days passed before anyone found him. A group of riders from the nearest town came across the cowboy sitting by the riverbank, staring at the water. His horse grazed nearby. His hat lay beside him. They called his name, but he didn't answer. He looked peaceful, almost asleep, his hand still clutching a turquoise pendant. They buried him on the ridge above the river. The townsfolk said he was a drifter, a good man with a haunted look in his eyes. No one knew about the Apache woman. No one knew the truth about what happened that night, but sometimes, when the moon was high and the river ran wild, travelers swore they saw two figures standing by the water, a cowboy and an Apache woman hand in hand, gazing across the desert as if guarding each other for all eternity. And the wind carried their story through the canyon. Of a lone cowboy who gave his breath to save a drowning woman, and the love that outlived even death.